Welcome to Basic and Bookish Podcast, the perfect place to crash out over our favorite books and connect with readers just like you. I'm Kinsey.
And I'm Karly.
Today is about Project Hail Mary, the book by Andy Weir and the movie adaptation starring Ryan Gosling. We will split our conversation into two different segments, talking first about the movie adaptation and then the book. You can find the timestamps for each section down in the show notes.
And with that, here's our official spoiler alert. This episode is full of Project Hail Mary spoilers, if that wasn't clear. So if you haven't read the book or watched the movie, go do that first, and we will be here waiting for you when you get back. We will give a separate spoiler warning when we switch from the movie discussion to talk about what we might be missing from the book. So if you've only seen the movie, you're safe to continue listening.
If you'd like to skip the ads and have access to full video formats, it's available now on Patreon. That link can be found in our show notes.
Now, prepare to join the chaos. Honestly, we blame the ADHD. All right, Kinsey, do you want to start off by telling everybody how many times you've seen Project Hail Mary?
Well, Karly, by this point, I have seen it 3 times in IMAX. I rarely will go to a movie theater multiple times to watch the same movie. I'm going to call myself out, though. I did watch The Hunger Games 7 times in theaters, so
yeah.
But it's rare. Like, that was, 15 years ago? Mm-hmm. So 3 times so far.
Okay.
And you?
Only once. I will say movie theater seats aren't the most comfortable for me in my back for 2.5 hours. So I have to really want to see a movie to even see one in theaters. But I did see Project Hail Mary, and I'm really glad I did.
It was so good. How did you feel about the movie overall?
I really liked it. It felt like an immersive experience. And I think that's because they shot the movie practical instead of like green screening it. So everything was like real set, and I really enjoyed it overall. How about you?
Obviously, I loved it. It is now my favorite movie. It's so good. I really enjoyed the movie score, especially. I felt like it just really drew me in emotionally and made those emotional scenes that did make me cry in the book. It made me cry even more in the movie. But I got to agree with you as well with those practical effects. I thought Rocky was so well done. He's so cute. I just love him even more. But yeah, I honestly want to say it may be the best movie adaptation I have seen for a book. So
yeah, I feel like personally, I won't give any spoilers, but I have read and watched The Martian, which is also by Andy Weir. I feel like that one was maybe even closer as an adaptation, but it's been years since I've watched that and read that book, so I could be incorrect. I feel like both of his books actually got very faithful adaptations, so he's very lucky in that regard.
He is. I wonder if he played a really big part in that happening. But
yeah. I just loved, though, like, talking about going back to being practical, the fact that so much of Rocky was a puppet.
Yes. And then the puppeteer ended up voicing him. I don't think that was originally planned. I think that ended up happening during the production.
That's correct, because Ryan Gosling would just be playing off of nothing. And so they had him saying the lines. But then that became Rocky's voice, and they decided that that was, like, perfect. And so they had him be Rocky's voice, which I thought was so cool for the puppeteer person. I don't know what job that is in Hollywood, to be honest. I'm sure you do a multitude of things if you do something like that for movie sets. But I think that must have been very exciting to be like, oh, we like you so much as Rocky to also do the voice. So that was pretty cool.
To finally get more recognition than I feel they normally would is pretty awesome. So
a very silent role, a puppeteer. So that must have been exciting. What were your favorite scenes?
Ooh, I loved the scene when Grace was having his moment where he went outside in the Petrova line for the first time and they turned on the scope and he's just spinning around and Rocky's like, what are you doing? But he's just like, I'm having a moment. I love that scene so much. It's just so good. And then, of course, when we first get to meet Rocky and they're just like doing the dancing, I love that scene as well. And honestly, I'll just go through the whole movie. No, but I do think that the I'm having a moment was my favorite scene. And how could I forget the part when Rocky tells Grace that he can give him his fuel, and he's like, I didn't mean any of that. That's just something people say. And I'm just like, like I was a mess. That was honestly the most that I had actually cried in the movie. But that was so good.
Yeah, and Rocky's all confused because he's crying. He's like, "Are you sad?" And he doesn't understand because so far he only understood crying as a sad thing. And
Yeah. And then
it was
he's
so
like,
cute.
and then he's like, hugging is something that two people do. And he's like, okay, well, like, are you done now? Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me also, when they did that scene where he's in the red sparkly dust, that was really, really cool. I listened to a thing on how they shot that and made that like a practical scene, and how you could only see it on camera. You couldn't see it if you were like, the actors couldn't see it, but they could see it on the film. And I thought that was so cool how they did that. I'm very impressed with how they made this movie.
So interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that they committed so hard to trying to make it feel like this really immersive experience. And I think they really achieved that. But as far as favorite scenes go, in addition to that one, I also really love the scene when he hugs Rocky that time, and Rocky like leans into his little cube, and he like leans against it. His little sphere. Yeah, that was so cute. But I also really, really, really love the scene when they first see each other and they both like scream and jump. And then he's trying to point to the little thing that he made him. And he thinks he's doing jazz hands, and he's like, "Oh, you're pointing. You just must think I'm an idiot."
Yep. Grace, and he's just like, "Oh, they think I'm dumb."
Yeah.
I felt like this movie was so funny. It was so much funnier than the book, and it didn't bother me how funny it was. I just really, really enjoyed how often I laughed. I either went between sobbing or laughing or just complete silence because it's so tense, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen. I'm just on the edge of my seat. But I thought they did a really, really great job throughout the movie. I wasn't bored at all, which is good.
Yeah. I think anytime you're going to have a movie with somebody being alone for a significant period of time of the movie where it's just them, you run the risk of the movie feeling slow, boring, but you never had that feeling watching this movie. It was really interesting the whole time. Ryan Gosling is obviously a very charming actor. He was great for the role. I don't know that that's who I would have pictured in the role if I had read the book before I knew the movie was coming out and before I knew Ryan Gosling was playing him. I think I probably would have had just more of a, I don't know, like probably somebody who looked like a teacher from when I was in high school kind of look, just because he was a high school teacher. But he was great in it, though. He was great.
So good. Now, I mentioned crying multiple times, but did you cry at all?
I didn't cry. I teared up in the movie when he leaned into the hug and he kind of like pushed his little Rocky head against the sphere. I was just like, oh gosh. But I didn't cry. You commit to the bit when you cry, so I didn't cry like you cried.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I cried 9 times. I was counting. And then the second time, I cried even more. It was a lot.
Yeah. I definitely cried a little more in the book than I did in the movie.
Yeah. In the book, I cried, I want to say, around 3 or 4 times. I totally was expecting to cry in the movie. I actually came prepared with a bunch of tissues. And before the movie started, I turned to my friend and I asked her, hey, do you need a tissue? And she's like, I'm not going to cry. I'll be totally fine. I was like, okay, suit yourself. And then sure enough, I'm like not even halfway through the movie, she starts sobbing. And I just like open up my tissue bag and just like hand her a tissue. And like all the people around me are crying, all these grown men. But yeah, okay. When did I cry? So girl, I was crying like 10 minutes into the movie when he was doing the funeral for his crewmates and he's looking through their belongings and it shows Yao with his son. And I'm just like, oh, he left his family. That's so sad. And then like just having memories of them. So I'm crying about that. Then I'm crying about just like tearing up when Rocky is first introduced, just because I love Rocky so much. And then I'm crying when Rocky offers him the fuel, because that was just such a powerful moment. But before that, I feel like I'm going out of order here, but the karaoke scene, that also made me cry.
Oh.
Which is crazy because a lot of people say the karaoke scene is the best time to go to the bathroom, but I disagree because it just felt so emotional to me. I love the song Sign of the Times by Harry Styles, and it's one of my songs that I listen to when I want to feel sad. And so to have them sing that song and the lyrics just worked perfectly, like going into the atmosphere, going somewhere far away from here, don't cry. Like it just was good. Like it made me cry again. But absolutely sobbing was Rocky giving him the fuel. That got me so good. And then the entire sequence of Rocky saving Grace and then Grace being like, "I'll watch over you, buddy. You can sleep now." It's so sad. I mean, like, just, oh my gosh. And just like Rocky's screams and him freaking out as the ship's colliding. I was just like, not okay. Even though I knew that Rocky would be okay, I was just not okay. And then when Grace finally tested the Taumiba and he's like, "It works." And then I was like, "Yeah, it works." As if I didn't already know that the Taumiba would work. And then what else? I'm trying to go in chronological order. And then saying goodbye. Oh my God, I was fucked up. I was so messed up during that scene. I was crying so hard. But then also because the song that they used was a Maori song when they said goodbye. And I used to live in Hawaii and I went to university out there. And every semester we'd always sing Aloha Oi to the people who were graduating, which is like a farewell song. And it just really, it gave me like the same vibes as Aloha Oi. And like I always cry whenever I sing or hear that song. And so I was just like, oh my God, it's so sad. I don't want to sing more. Yeah, that messed me up as well. And then him finally choosing to be brave for himself and go save Rocky. And when he came back and he was like, "I'm here for you, Rocky," I was like, oh my God, he's there for Rocky. And then at the very, very end, when he raises his hands and all the little Iridians are like,
it was so sweet.
So sweet.
Yeah.
So sweet. Oh, man.
You mentioned about how people say the karaoke scene is the only good scene to go pee in. And I agree. I don't think that's a great scene, but I will say I don't know that this is a movie with a lot of great scenes to go pee in. I feel like they condensed a lot of book information to a 2.5-hour movie. So it's pretty packed. And I think some of the lighter moments where there isn't really important plot are the really funny moments. And so you don't want to miss those either. But I just want to mention this to people really quick. There is an app for this problem. It is called the Run Pee app, RUNPEE, and you can download it onto your phone and you can tell it what movie you're in and it'll tell you which scenes, how far into the movie it is, and it'll give you a synopsis of what happens in that scene while you're in the bathroom, and it'll tell you how like long each break is. So they always pick at least 3 scenes in these apps so people know what happens. There used to be a feature, I haven't had to use it in a long time, but there used to be a feature where you could hit start when your movie started and it would like buzz for you for a second, like silent vibrate. So you would know when it's time to go run to the bathroom if you need to pee.
Wow.
So if you're a person who can't make it through a movie, that app might be for you.
That's very, very interesting.
Yeah. There's an app for everything.
Honestly. I forgot a scene where I cried. I knew that I was missing a scene. When he's like, "I'm having a moment," that also made me cry because I was just like, it's so beautiful. It's just the music was so moving.
Well, that scene was just really beautiful in general.
It was stunning.
All right. I think that's it for the movie. Do we want to move on to talking about the book?
I think we do, which, by the way, we're still going to be talking about the movie. We're just going to be comparing it to the book a bit more.
Yes. So if you're worried about book spoilers, I will say it's very similar. There's just some scenes that got changed, but this is your formal spoiler warning for Project Hail Mary, the book, because now we will be discussing how we feel about certain movie changes and what we wish was still included in the movie.
I had briefly mentioned this earlier, but the biggest thing for me was the humor. I did think the book was funny too, that it had its moments, but it wasn't a lot of laugh out loud moments for me. Just off the top of my head, a super funny scene that I really, really enjoyed was when Rocky had first come onto the ship and he's just like, "Dirty, dirty, dirty." And then he goes by the projector room and he's like, "This room's boring," which was funny because it was a view of the Grand Canyon and it's just full of rocks and like Rocky's a rock. And then when Grace is, he can hear everything, like personal space is at a premium. And he's like, "Who Grace talking to?" He's like, "Yes, I can hear." So I liked the humor. Same with like Carl even. Just the scene where he's working with that agent before going onto the ship, I thought was done well.
I was a big Carl fan. He was great. He was funnier in the movie for sure.
And speaking of, I wouldn't say funnier, but characters who were different, Strat for sure.
I don't think we got enough of her recognition of how this was probably going to go for her after the mission was launched, and how she was fully expecting to be tried for war crimes and arrested and maybe even killed, and how she really believed in what they were doing so much that she just didn't care. Like, she was willing to be that scapegoat in order to get this done out of desperation to save the planet as a whole. She was a very interesting, complex character, and I don't think you got nearly enough of that in the movie.
I agree. I think that they toned her down. We didn't get to see her go to court and then say, well, actually, here are these documents that I have that is clearing me from any wrongdoing. I'm just going to keep doing whatever I want. I mean, we do see her in charge, and there are a few moments where she's just like, stay where you are, we'll come get you, blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't the same power as what she had in the book, which was different.
I just think, too, that discrepancy in her, like the difference in the characters between her and Grace was so interesting, because like you do get that moment in the movie where he's like, this must be really hard for you, and she's like, not really. And you'd think it would be harder to knowingly send people out knowing they're not going to come back, they're not going to live. I mean, and then obviously at the end, Grace does live, like through some miracle of finding another alien civilization, but assuming that they're all going to die, and how she just is very unequivocal in her goal and what she does. And Grace is very opposite of that. And he's very hesitant about things. He can be very self-serving. A lot of things can be about his ego. And I don't know that we got that kind of payoff with him at the end of the movie about his like character development as much as we did in the book, I feel like.
I feel like he did get his character development, though, with them adding on the whiteboard, who am I brave for, or who would I die for? And it's a question that he's asked himself a lot, because he thinks he doesn't have anybody at home. There's no one that he cares about. But then what I really enjoy about the storyline in general is, yeah, he didn't have that choice at first, but then he did make that choice thinking he was going to die. And he chose to sacrifice himself for someone who's not even human, for someone who has already lived over 100 years, much longer than a human ever would. But if he didn't save that one creature, then that entire planet would die too. But he made that choice. It was an ultimate sacrifice because he wasn't expecting to live, which they didn't touch on this in the movie, which I do wish that they kind of did touch on, is the fact that Grace didn't have enough food. We didn't get the me burger. I was really hoping we would get the me burger, but that was something that they were worried about in the book is, well, yeah, you can give me all of this fuel, but I'm not going to be able to eat any of your food. And so he was malnourished with the Talmiba, and then they generated the me burger, and they just don't talk about his dwindling food supply at all in the movie.
Yeah, I think some of those obstacles definitely got grazed over a certain extent, which I thought was interesting, because that was like an important plot line that he was trying to figure out how to survive, and the food thing was a really important part. But that being said, I understand why it wasn't super important, I think, to the point of the story.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, because we still know he's making a sacrifice, even if it's not food. Because at this point, everyone knows that he doesn't have enough fuel to make it home. So no matter what, he wasn't going to make it. Something else that they didn't really include was that he had a specific genetic marker that made him eligible to go into space with the coma. That was something they had left out. They ended up saying, oh, it's the bravery gene, to snake that in there, but nothing specifically with the coma.
Yeah, that did get left out. I understand why to a certain extent. I don't know how central that actually was to the story, because I think even without that, they were already looking at a very narrow pool of people. I think the point of that in the book was just to make it seem like it was a even narrower pool of people that they could pull from. But I think at the end there, they just made it seem like, well, we only have 2 options to send and the other person isn't good enough and you have to go.
Yeah.
But I get why they left it out, but it would have been interesting to add in. I don't know how much time it would have taken to add in. It would have been interesting.
Yeah. And allegedly there is a director's cut. Apparently the first showing they had was like 3 hours and 45 minutes or something.
Oh my gosh.
I am desperate for this cut. I would love to see it. But for the most part, I did like how they streamlined everything. As someone who does have a background in STEM, it didn't bother me that there was less science. Like, we didn't have to go through all 87 generations of the Talmiba. Like, it was just kind of done really quickly. We didn't see him writing on the whiteboard, figuring out gravity and being like, oh, I'm in space. Instead, he just looks out a window. Oh, yeah, I'm in space. So I thought they did a good job streamlining everything. The only scene where I genuinely was sad that it wasn't included, besides the me burger, which is a very minor detail, was Antarctica. I was really, really hoping to see them blow up Antarctica and see the repercussions of that and see how the planet was making these fail-safes as they were working on Project Hail Mary. Like, oh, you know, global warming has been such a big issue for us for decades, but now we're causing it intentionally to try to keep our planet warmer a little bit longer. I think that would have been really cool to see on screen. So that's the only part that I'm like sad they didn't include, but for the most part, I thought that they got all of the important details that needed to be in it. But
Yeah, I will say I saw a clip recently of the director talking about how they had like a list of, I think, 10 scenes or something like that they're like, we have to absolutely include these in the movie, or like their top 10 wish list for the movie, I think is what it was. Not that they have to include it, but their wish list. And Antarctica they said was the only one that didn't make it in the movie, and that they were sad about it, but that they only had so much time, which I understand, because once a movie starts getting close to 3 hours, a lot of people aren't going to go.
yeah. And I thought the guy who created the Beatles was really fun in the book, but I'm glad that when Grace first got onto the ship, they had a PowerPoint waiting for him. This is what we're doing. We have these Beatles. Or I don't know if they even called them Beatles at the time, but we have these probes to come back to Earth. So we didn't have to go through the creation of all of those things. And we still got the nod because when he did send them, they had the names of the Beatles. So yeah, those were like very minor, but Antarctica, I was like, come on, I wanted to see that.
It would have been interesting. It was too bad that it got left out. I do think the direness of the situation for Earth over the next 30 years, because, you know, he's in space for like, he experiences, I think he says it's like 7 years or something like that, but on Earth it's 30 years. I don't remember the exact time frame. But I do think that got glossed over a little bit because they were, you know, Strat talks a lot about how bad the conditions are going to be on Earth over the next 30 years, and there's going to be wars and famine and resource hoarding and, you know, resource theft and all these things, and that people were going to starve to death, and that it was going to affect the poorest countries first. And that heaviness I felt much more in the book than I did in the movie personally. Yeah. And I thought that was actually an interesting storyline. I personally, at the end of the book, was sad when we didn't get to know anything about the condition of Earth at the end of the book. I was like, what happened though? Like, things were going to be so bad for the next 30 years. Like, did they work together? And I understand that wasn't the story he was telling. Like, he was telling a very much science fiction space story. And that is more of a dystopian Earth story. So there was like two separate stories kind of going on at the same time. He has talked about writing a sequel. I'm hoping it's going to be Strat's Earth story, which I would find very interesting personally.
That would be interesting. Yeah, that is a change that I actually did like with the movie, is that we got them receiving the probe at the end. Because before it's just Rocky telling him, hey, your star is getting brighter. And he's like, yay, it must have worked then. Because before he just didn't know if it worked. There's another scene that I want to talk about that I'm actually glad they did add in that wasn't in the book. That's kind of like, oh, we didn't get to see it in the book, but they like made it up for the movie. He got to go inside Rocky's ship. That was so cool.
That's true. He did get to go in his ship. He was very excited about that. That was cool.
Are there any other scenes that you found to be different from the book that you wish was different, or you're happy they changed?
Yes, I was really sad that the movie changed the reunion scene between Rocky and Grace. When he goes back for Rocky, it's a quiet moment in the movie. I think they just kind of press their hands against each other in the movie through the glass. And in the book, Rocky is freaking out. He can't even believe that Grace is really there or that he's real. Like, Rocky like, can't even accept it. And he's
Grace, your question.
Yes. He's so happy. That's the part of the book that got me where I sobbed crying. Mm-hmm. And I understand like it was like a more understated emotional moment in the movie. I greatly preferred the book.
110% agree with you there. I still cried in the movie, to be completely clear, obviously, in that scene. Mm-hmm. But I was so shocked because it's just 2 lines that they needed to add. And I was like, bro, what?
Yeah.
It only would have added to the emotions of that scene. But the other Rocky scene that I still haven't quite decided yet if I'm glad they made this change or not. But when I first saw it, I was actually really sad about it, was when Rocky saves Grace. And then Grace, in the books, has to carry his body. And Rocky's like hundreds of pounds and he's getting burned by him. Instead, Rocky gets himself into his tunnel again. And I think it would have been maybe a little bit more meaningful if in his state, Grace had been the one to do that. And that's how he got his scars. And then he almost accidentally killed Rocky by thinking he was healing him, but actually was like doing the exact opposite of what he needed to do. But they completely skipped all of the biology for Iridian. So I understand why they didn't keep that part in with like the blow dryer. I mean, it's not a blow dryer, but I do wish that he carried Rocky into his little area, his little tunnel.
His little terrarium.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I was like, oh, they kind of skipped over that. They kind of glossed that over a little bit. I understand why, again, for time and everything. I do think that was more of those scenes, though, where I saw Grace making self-sacrificing decisions in order to help somebody else, which I think his character kind of needed.
Yeah.
Because he was not like the hero who sacrificed himself to go into space. He was the guy who was drugged and thrown into a spaceship and told to figure it out.
Yeah.
After he refused to go. And mind you, I'm not saying that that was the wrong decision. That is a very personal decision about whether or not you're going to sacrifice yourself. And I think I could have a very long theological conversation over what is the right decision there and is what Strat did right. Did she make, she made the right decision for humankind. But that being said, making that decision for somebody else, given those set of circumstances, what's right and what's wrong is a really interesting conversation to have. I think Grace made, the decision a more self-serving decision for himself in that moment. And we get to see him become the hero he thought he was at first until he gets his memories back. Once he remembers it all, he's like, oh, shoot, I wasn't like this heroic guy doing this because I thought it was right. And he kind of wanted to be that. And we see him make decisions towards that throughout the book and the movie. And that was one of those moments that got taken away that I felt like kind of lessened his character arc personally.
Yeah. And I think what would have been really cool if they did include this still, it's such a small detail, but explaining that the reason he had amnesia was because she gave him a drug. That was an insane twist. Like, obviously they included that he went against his will, but she literally told him, this is like a French secret service thing that they use when they interrogate people and they have no idea that they've even been given it. And then Grace said, well, I'm just going to jeopardize the mission. To hell with humankind. Everyone's screwed because I'm going to be so bitter about it. And I think it would have been pretty cool if she's like, actually, you're not going to remember anything. Again, they made her more soft. I think if they did keep that detail in, people would have been like, oh, she is kind of not a great person.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, though. She's a very interesting character. Like, as a character study, Strat was one of my most favorite characters. She's fascinating. And the whole book is essentially a trolley problem. It's just one trolley problem after another. And I found that concept very interesting as I was reading it. And I really enjoyed that. And I think Strat is one of those people that has a trolley problem in front of them and has no qualms, no concerns. They're just like, this is what's right for everybody, so that's what I'm doing. She really believes that. And Grace is very much a character who like goes back and forth between what's right and what's wrong. There's a lot more equivocation in him than there is in Strat. They're very interesting, juxtaposed against each other.
Totally agree. Are you glad that you read the book before watching the movie?
Yes, I'm always glad I read the book before the movie. I always make it a point to. Do you know how many things I have not watched yet? Because I'm like, I haven't gotten around to reading the book and I won't let myself watch it.
I think I'm a little bit more lenient when it comes to shows than movies. I actually refuse to read Game of Thrones because George R.R. Martin has not finished writing it. I started it and I'm like, ugh. Like, sorry to people who are fans of that book, but I was just like, this seems like unnecessary violence here.
Not for Kinsey.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to get into it because trigger warnings and things. But anyways, so like for that show, no. And then we just had our Bridgerton episode. I haven't read Bridgerton.
That's fair. I haven't read Bridgerton, but to be fair, my sister said that she thought I'd actually like the show more than the books. And I trust her opinion with that. She's like, I actually think you'll just enjoy the show more. And so I was like, okay. So I just watched the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, 9 times out of 10, I always read the book before watching the movie. And I usually always think that the book is better. Not to be like, oh, I was into it before it got cool. But with the Hunger Games, girl, when they announced that that was going to be a movie, I created a countdown that was like hundreds of days, more than a year. It was like 2 years of a countdown. And every day I'd post on Facebook, 397 days until the Hunger Games movie comes out. 396 days, 395. Literally was counting down every day with a different quote from the book every single day. I was crazy, but I did like it before it was cool. But yeah, no, like Heated Rivalry, Project Hail Mary. I read those books knowing it was about to be a movie, and I did not watch any trailers because of it. I waited until I finished the book before doing any of that. But I am glad that I read the book. You just get so much more context.
I agree. I will say I went to the movies with my husband, and the part where him and Rocky separate and then the Talmiba escapes and starts eating through his fuel. But there was like pieces of the ship, I think, like coming off. And my husband got really confused and thought the Talmiba was eating the ship and not the fuel. And so he was confused why going back to Rocky was actually going to help him because he didn't understand that it was like eating the fuel. Because he was like, well, if it's eating both their ships are toast. And so I had to explain that to him. And I've had a couple people actually since watch the movie that I've had to explain that to as well, because they both thought it was eating the ship and not the fuel. And so I do think those are things that were in the book where the science was more clear of what was happening.
That does make sense. We did skip Ryan Gosling having to blast Talmiba poop from his fuel tanks. And
really
I think
missed that scene.
Yeah. It was like a very, very short line. I'm pretty sure it was in the movie, but I think Rocky had said, oh, yeah, like, are your new fuel tanks good? Like, because he did remake it with the Xenonite, but it was such a quick little snippet that they added in that if you didn't read the book, you still probably wouldn't have caught that. That is a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
For that specific scene.
When I went back and explained which scenes in the movie explained, he was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. But I think for him visually, there was just a scene where there were some pieces like falling off the ship. And so he thought it was actually eating the ship, which was fair because the visual component of a movie is part of the story. So I understood why he thought that, but I did explain it.
Yeah.
All that being said, which do you prefer, the book or the movie?
I think I still prefer the book. I don't know. Like I said, this is now my favorite movie, and I love it so much. But you just got to go with the source material. What about you?
I also prefer the book, so I understand. I will say, I think they nailed the movie for the most part. I really enjoyed it. I think they took something, because the science fiction in the book is actually kind of complicated. He really does delve into the science of things.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, and that might not be enjoyable for people. Like, I'm not sure my husband would actually enjoy the book, but he really, really enjoyed the movie. So I think they did a good job of making an adaptation of a book enjoyable for both people who would have liked the book and people who maybe wouldn't have actually enjoyed the book. So I do think they did a really, really good job. I do prefer the book, but I almost always prefer the book. So that's not saying much. I feel like one exception to that rule, and it's always controversial.
Oh, what is it?
Divergent. I prefer first two movies to the first two books by a lot.
Okay, I do not agree with you there.
It's controversial. It's controversial,
Yeah.
but I found the first two movies more fun to watch than to read.
Well, the second one, I will give you that. The first one, oh no. No, I thought the book was better. But anyway, I did get my husband to read the book beforehand. He does not read ever. So this was a big win for me. And he was also glad that he had read the book beforehand. But I don't know if he liked it more as a movie or as a book. I do think the movie is more emotional and it was very beautiful. And it's a comfort movie for me now. But I don't know. Just the small details that the movie did leave out is what makes me choose the book. If they did include Antarctica and maybe the Me Burger and included the quotes from Rocky when they had reunited after he went to save him, I think I would have said the movie actually. If they included that.
That's fair. Well, maybe we're going to need that extended director's cut edition. I'm sure they'll release an extended edition. I just don't know if they actually made the Antarctica scene and cut it or if it just wasn't even made.
I don't think they would have made the Antarctica scene, but I can imagine that they would include a lot more of the science and maybe add in some other quotes of Rocky's that got cut. Like, oh, yes, me big scary space monster.
Yeah.
I think that was one that got cut that people were upset about. So
All right. Anything else you want to talk about the movie?
it's just such a great story. And I love how the whole world came together to solve an issue. And I know that our current society could not do that. So it was really refreshing, especially because we had a woman in charge. But yeah, no, it's just so great. And just the way that he chooses to sacrifice himself for Rocky, and just Rocky's such a sweetie pie and such a genius. And yeah, I don't know. I just love it. Just such a great story.
Yeah, it is a great story. Speaking of Rocky being a genius, I will say that was also something that I feel like you got much more of a clear picture of in the book than you did the movie, of how incredibly smart Rocky is. I think in the movie he comes off across as kind of a quirky engineer, and in the book you're like, oh, this is like a high level math genius with a perfect recall memory. He's so smart. I don't think that came across in the movie.
That's true. He did say, and this is a scene I actually have been meaning to bring up, but when they're celebrating and he has a Savior of the Universe hat and he's wearing his cute little uniform, love that scene.
Yeah.
But Grace gives him his little earth hacky sack. He's like, so you can remember me. And Rocky's like, Rocky never forget. But he literally never forgets.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't read the book, I would probably assume he's a genius just because of the stuff that he's creating, just when he was sending over those gifts and they ended up exactly where Grace needed them. That was pretty exact. But
yeah, no, it was. I just think in the book, there's moments where Grace is like, oh, I'm just a complete idiot to you. He thinks that all the time about how smart Rocky is. And I don't feel like that was kind of impressed upon in the movie as much as it was the book. But yeah, Rocky forever.
I remembered another scene that made me cry.
Oh, which one?
Because I was thinking about how he would just do all these math equations, but I don't know how that even got me to where I'm going next. The other scene that made me cry was obviously when Rocky was talking about how his crewmates died and that he used to watch him sleep. And that's why he wanted to watch Grace sleep. That is a scene that made me sob in the book. I crashed out because I was like, oh my God, he's just like a sad little space alien and he just like needs somebody with him and he doesn't feel safe. And now he has someone to watch him sleep again. So good.
Yeah, that was a really, really, really sweet moment. I did love that.
Right? And we never got to meet Adrian. We never got to meet his mate.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Maybe in the sequel.
Maybe. Oh my gosh, can you imagine if there is one?
I'm talking about like it's definitely happening, but I feel like Andy Weir is probably going to write it at this point.
Maybe. We'll see.
Based on the way he's talked about it. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, movie was a 10-star for me.
Yeah. Well, on that note, This is where we leave you today, Basic Book Besties. Thank you so much for listening. Please leave us a review and join us next week. If you need more bookish content, we have a crash course season for the Masterverse, spice ratings, our thoughts on recent adaptations, upcoming Fourth Wing deep dive topics, and more. If you stick around, we have really fun author interviews scheduled and discussions on some of our favorite contemporary romances.
You can join us over on Patreon, where you can access all of our episodes ad-free, 3 days early, and in full video. Plus extras like exclusive book club access and shoutouts on the show. You'll find our Patreon link in the show notes, along with all the ways you can support the podcast. Today's shoutouts go to A-Love, Josie, and Taylor. Thank you so much for supporting our content. If you also want to be shouted out in a future episode, you can join our Bookish tier on Patreon.
Don't forget to stay in the loop by following us on social media and joining us in our Discord chat. Who knows? You might just meet your next book bestie there. You can also check out our website, basicandbookishpod.com, for info about our upcoming seasons, our contact form, and more. We've linked that down in the show notes.
Until next time, reach out on Discord to let us know if you think the Project Hail Mary movie held up to the book. See you there.
I think that it's going to be an interesting discussion, honestly, of whether or not people think it held up, because I think some people are more disappointed over certain scenes getting left out than others.
Really?
Yes.
I think they kept as much as they could have to make it as good as it was. It was just a true adaptation to me. Some adaptations will take such big liberties with certain scenes that it feels like a completely different story, and you just have to accept, okay, it's a different medium. They're separate crafts. But for this, it was so close to the book that it's like a companion to the book. So
yeah, it did feel that way to me too. But I'm just saying, I have seen some people being really, really upset about certain scenes. So we'll see. Let us know.
I'm not one of those people, but if you are, that's okay.
Yeah.